age of darkness.
May God have mercy upon your souls.
Something's wrong. Something's amiss.
And a time of evil.
You shall die!
When the world needed a hero.
The swallow us all. I don't want to die.
What it got was him.
Groovy. You know your shoelace is untied.
He's a 20th century guy.
For that arrogance, I shall see you dead.
Trapped in the Middle Ages.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. This is my boomstick.
Now, let's talk about how I get back home.
Foretold by a mystical book.
Within its pages are passages that can send you back to your time.
Forewarned by a wise man.
You must recite the words Klaatu, Berata, Niktu.
I got it.
Fulfilled by a wise guy.
Klaatu, Barada.
When thou misspoke the words, the army of the dead awoke.
Now he's got a date.
Give me some sugar, baby.
With the army of darkness.
You found me beautiful once.
Honey, you got real ugly.
Sound the trumpets. Raise the drawbridge. Drop the Oldsmobile. From Sam Raimi.
Oh, that's gonna hurt.
Director of Darkman. Comes Army of Darkness. They live. They breathe. They suck. Army of Darkness.
Hi everyone, my name is Carlos Perone, and welcome to Geekfest Rants. Today I have Steve Ivona here joining me today, where we are going to be talking about what is a cult film. We've both grown up in an age where some of the films we've seen were not very successful. Some of them were super mega hits, but some were not very successful. But all of a sudden through the years, and through the years I'm talking about usually the 80s, these films were able to kind of return in some way and become successful in a different manner by becoming cult films. All of a sudden, certain avenues opened up that these films were able to kind of return to us in a way where even today, 30 years later, people are remaking these films, people are continuing these films, and this kind of phenomenon doesn't seem to happen all the time, but sometimes it even stretches all the way to television. We have a lot of cult classics we love.
Yeah, and we're going to get through as many of them as we possibly can.
I wonder if it's harder to determine what's a good cult film than an overall good film. Like you take an E.T., and it's very difficult to deny it being a good, entertaining film that appeals to a wide range of audience, as opposed to something that's so narrowly there.
But you know what? With the cult films, you have to give them a certain amount of time to die and then to be reborn as cult films. You take your Evil Deads, your They Lives, your Highlanders. You're talking about movies that die on the vine when they come out, and then at least 3, 4, 5 years later, you're saying, wow, this isn't so bad. And you're hearing a buzz. I mean, even before the internet, I can remember reading an article. I used to love this magazine called Film Threat, which was a real sort of like kind of nasty, pushing the edge. They talked about John Woo stuff, and they talked about Godzilla movies, the recent Godzilla movies. And I remember reading an article, this was probably in around 93, 94, where they were talking about They Live, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, you know, those movies, Highlander, those kind of late 80s cult classics that, you know, had legs on cable and video and everything. You know, it's hard to say when a movie comes out that, oh, this is going to be a cult classic.
But let me ask you a question. The title of cult classic, like we mentioned before, in the, let's say, 60s and 70s, when there was no mass home video market, was there such a thing as a cult classic? You go to your Hiraki Horror and its aura of culty fan base based on these midnight showings. That's it. There was no home.
Right.
Now, you hit the 80s and the video revolution, and obviously all of our stuff dies in the theater and moves on to video. not only video, but the beginning of cable. Cable was, I think, maybe even bigger than video because you got to see movies every other day. I would watch it, go into it and jump into halfway through it or whatever.
Yeah, you just jumped in.
But let me ask you a question. In more modern times, through the 90s and through nowadays, where is the cult status popping up?
That's a very interesting point.
Is it internet? Is it streaming? Is it, what the hell is it now?
Well, maybe it's a generational thing, like our generation, but I'm not seeing that the way I've seen it for these 80s movies. I mean, I think there's been a lot of crap. And don't forget, they're remaking the stuff that we liked. There's nothing original coming out.
I mean, let's take a very modern film that we talked about recently, Dread.
Yes.
I'm going to call this a cult film now because it's sunk in the box office.
Right.
And it's culty because I like it, and I think other people like it.
Yeah.
But is it the same type of cult as something like this? Now, granted, it's only been a year.
It's only been a year.
But do films nowadays they obviously have a way of being delivered to people in different mediums, but is there so much stuff now that you don't have time to create new cults?
Honestly, it's a hard question to answer. I think that at least with our generation, and it's so hard to be objective because I love our generation's stuff.
Is it because we had so little access to material
that
we obsessed over it?
I don't think it's that. I think it's the certain directors like Carpenter, like Raimi, they appealed to our generation and they made multiple films and they didn't do well. And we maybe kind of felt like not bad or rebellious, but we were like, yeah, or John Woo even, like, we like that stuff. I mean, yeah, did we like mainstream? Sure we did.
Yes.
Spielberg, Lucas, whatever.
Right, you're not a hipster.
We're not a hipster. No.
You're not
oh my God, we're not a hipster.
We're not going trendy because of trendy.
No.
We still acknowledge what we consider good, mainstream good.
Tarantino and all that stuff, but I'm not a snob.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Tarantino because Tarantino nowadays is mainstream.
Right.
But, the hipster would say, I only like old Tarantino. I don't like new Tarantino.
It's like to that. I mean, but...
And let me give you another example. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That movie had no home video way of getting out there when it first came out. In the 80s, yes, you were able to then get it.
There's a movie that comes to mind that, I mean, you'll probably be like, what the hell are you talking about? In terms of cult and not coming out at the time where it could have... Just didn't even have midnight showings, but it's a cult film. Barbarella with Jane Fonda. I mean, that movie, and I think it's terrible, by the way, but I mean, it has lived on, and it has these crazy visuals, crazy costumes, over-the-top acting, and it was not well regarded. I mean, it almost sunk her career. Came out in like 1968, but it lives on. It's not for us, but it lives on. Why? Again, why? Because it has a little bit of an off-center appeal. You know what I'm saying? Off-center, not mainstream, and it connects with enough people to make it live. I mean, our movies, great example would be Highlander. I loved Highlander from the moment I saw it, but it was a bomb. It was a hit in Europe, but it was a bomb. What it had going for it, in terms of not just, I thought it had some great actors in it, but Russell Mulcahy's style of shooting the movie, his transitions, his use of Queen, it's like a witch's brew of stuff that just, it's a concoction that you can't reproduce it the exact same way. You can't say, well, I did all this right, because Russell Mulcahy has never done a movie since that. Raimi, he's been more successful in his culty movies, and Carpenter too. But we could go on and on. I can't answer the question completely.
Is it me, or does the cult status seem to relate more when it comes to horror films?
Horror and sci-fi. Because look at the movies that are coming out now from one of my favorite companies for Blu-ray is Shout Factory. They're putting out these amazing Blu-rays of sci-fi and horror. Some titles I wouldn't have expected, but you're getting movies like They Live.
Yes.
Movies like The Howling, and even lesser movies like Phantasm and stuff like that, which don't have the kind of reputations as the other ones, but they still have a following. And they do these incredible special editions. and they sell very, very well. And they're like top 10 Blu-rays, and people want that stuff. There is an audience. There is a market. Look at one of your favorite films, Halloween 3, which was given a really, really impressive Blu-ray with the commentaries and the documentaries. And
You don't
and
think
the whole...
it's just riding on the coattails of the first two?
Well, no, because I mean, look, they got the rights. Shout Factory got the rights to Halloween 2 and 3, and look, there's enough of not Halloween the original, and there's enough of a audience to justify making such an elaborate special edition and having it sell well.
Now, what do you think gives a film cult status? I mean, one of the things I notice a lot of times is that when merchandising comes out years and years after this movie came out, and you're like, why are they bothering to merchandise something that is so old, that is not on the radar of everybody at that point?
I'll give you a perfect example. That's a great question. It's funny because just within the last couple of days, you talk about merchandising, something that's old.
Yeah.
They are coming out with, and believe me, as much as I am not into buying action figures and dolls and that stuff anymore, they are coming out with licensed figures from the Batman TV series. And with the look of the Batman, I just saw figures, and believe me, I was drooling.
Like full plastic?
Full,
not clothy?
Oh, I think they might be cloth. I'm not positive.
Okay.
You'd have to check that. But I saw figures for Batman, Robin, Catwoman, and the Joker looking like the actors and having the outfits. I saw a Joker figure, which actually kind of reminded me of the Mego figure, but it was Cesar Romero. It was him. And I don't even know, like, the pictures were only released like 2 days ago. And I don't know, like, I don't know if the cowl comes off Batman, but it looks just like, I mean, just perfect. And you're talking about a show that is almost 50 years old.
Well, with TV, it's a little different. With TV, it's a little more difficult to differentiate between something that is so old that if all of a sudden it pops up again in some shape, you might say it's got a cult following. But Batman was a popular show, I imagine, in the 60s.
Yeah, and it did very well in syndication.
The fact that someone is interested in rebranding it or remarketing an aspect of the show or in terms of merchandising.
That doesn't surprise you?
No, not really. I mean, I've seen $6 Million Man toys pop out now out of nowhere.
Really?
And
I haven't seen
yeah,
that.
they do the, remember like the Star Trek original dolls?
The Mego dolls?
The ones that were like a foot tall.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
a little less than a foot
Yeah, I
with,
had those.
with cloth.
The
okay,
Mego.
they have now $6 Million Man versions like that. They have the original Battlestar Galactica versions of those clothy ones. It's almost like a retro toy.
Yes.
So
but I would imagine that they only manufacture enough to meet the demand, because I don't...
Oh,
would you see
yeah.
that in Toys R Us? I don't think so.
You might find them not in the Misfit aisle, but in that aisle that has all those McFarlanes and
Yes,
stuff like
yes.
that. But it's more of a collector item. It's more of a comic book store item. Mm-hmm. But on television, yeah, that's another weird one. I mean, I don't know if you see it as frequently on television as you do see on films. And I guess part of it is because with television, you're dealing with multiple episodes of XYZ.
Right.
And
It could be
people
airing for years and years.
Right, and people
years.
have less patience to commit the amount of time to watch 3 seasons or 1 season. Now, granted, you say that, you can then come back to me and say, Firefly. There's a cult. Because
a huge cult.
Financially, it was a disaster. If you think about we produce a show and we pull the plug on it right away, but the people that love it, and I'm not going to say every single person in the world loves it. No, the people that love it are still going to carry the torch for that show forever.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Which would give it, the legs to continue to merchandise different aspects of it and yada, yada, yada. But a film, I imagine it's easier because it's just a one-shot deal. Here, give me 90 minutes of your time, and now you have a follower.
Well, I'll say this, too, about cults. Since you brought up Firefly, when you have something that dies prematurely, like Firefly, way, way prematurely, or even the original Star Trek series, 3 seasons was not enough for the fans that, wrote letters. It was canceled after the 2nd season and saved for a 3rd, but still people they would have wanted like a Lost in Space run or longer for Star Trek and didn't get it. It's that hunger for more. I mean, look, we were talking before about certain movies that'll never have sequels, like They Live, but even Highlander, a bomb of a movie, spawned a film franchise and a hugely successful television series.
How and why?
But yet you have, because of the cult.
Well, the cult and the potential for somebody to not be nice to the cult, for somebody to the potential to make money.
Let's talk about something else if we're going along these lines, and it's not specifically genre related, but it could have a huge impact on genre stuff. Like Firefly, for example, is this notion of and I don't know if you've read anything about it, the Kickstarter campaign that has restarted the Veronica Mars. There's going to be now a Veronica Mars feature film.
Yes.
They went online, they produced like a 5-minute video asking for fans to make donations. Within half a day, they had $2 million. The money is still racking up. And Warner Brothers has agreed to produce the film, distribute the film. They already have a start date for shooting the film. Now, I loved this show. Now, I loved it on sort of a Buffy level. I thought it was that good. Joss Whedon even directed an episode, and he's a big proponent of it. So immediately after that happened, people were saying, well, how about Firefly? How about this? How about that? You know, if you go to the fans who love this stuff and want the content, and the studio is like, yeah, you want to put up the money? Sure, we'll distribute it. You know, I mean, the potential. The first thing that they did after this happened was go to Joss Whedon and say, when's Firefly?
They want him to pony up money, probably.
Well, I mean, you know.
Well, but that's a whole other new model that I haven't even considered yet in terms of its effectiveness in that manner. I mean, I've heard of Kickstarter, people doing their own little private projects.
Yeah, like
here
little
and there.
indie stuff.
Right. But for it to be a tool to be able to influence the fan community of XYZ in order to convince a studio that there's potential of something, that's very interesting.
If Joss Whedon made a video and asked for donations, I'd send $20. I swear to God I would. To make more Firefly? Or whatever. I mean,
I just can't. I can't imagine the parameters of something like what does that mean?
I think it's a total game changer.
I mean, does that mean that the studios would just say, "All right, we just distribute. You tell us whatever garbage you want, and we'll just distribute it. But you guys got to pony up the $100 million you need for a film, or the."
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like a movie that's effects heavy, something like Firefly,
that's the problem.
Would that be even possible to raise that? But when you look at how quickly they got their money for Veronica Mars,
but the question is not the amount of money. The question to me is the amount of people, because you can have a secret guy saying, "Here's $1 million from me," and then 10 other people contribute $10 a piece. Mm-hmm. It's the heads. How many people are saying, yes, we want this? 1 million people?
But here again,
100,000 people?
Does it have to be, what's the delivery mechanism for it? Like the Veronica Mars movie, I've heard different things, that it may come out in the theaters, it may come out on demand, it may go straight
Netflix?
to DVD. Netflix, I mean, Netflix is
That's
huge
another
now.
model that's
another model. Talk about game changers with House of Cards and Arrested Development and all this stuff. You have these new delivery models for these Arrested Development. Talk about a cult. They did that season,
bitching and moaning for years, people, and now they're going to get something.
They're going to get a feature film. So it's we're in a flux period now where it's sort of in a updated way. Like the Kickstarter is like the letter writing campaign that saved Star Trek. It's the fans of a certain show, movie, whatever, that are saying, we want more. Feed us. You know what? We'll give you the money. Just get the actors, get the people, get the right people. We give you the money. I mean, a studio, if I could see the dollar signs going off, because the fans aren't going to they're just going to profit from the content, the new content.
Right.
They're not getting back
their investment.
An investment. Exactly. They're just crazy enough to put money into this just so
disposable cash.
It could be for Firefly. It could just be a TV movie. It doesn't have to be a theatrical movie. It could be a Netflix. It could be anything. Because who cares? I mean, things are changing.
I don't know. It just seems that when we were growing up, the rules of what determined a cult status and how things became cult and the rules of what could become of something cult. There weren't many options for something cult. The best you could get is the fact that you might own a VHS version of whatever the movie it is that you consider to be cult. And that's where it would normally die, because at that point, video was the new thing and nobody knew, is this going to sink movies now? Is video rentals going to kill people going to the movies? So you got to be careful. I don't know which way video is going to go.
But look at it this way, too. If you had a movie that was bad, or not bad, but a movie that was a bomb, and didn't make money, but then it made money on VHS, it gets a sequel. Because of the VHS rentals, not because of the... Highlander is a perfect example. You say what you want about the quality of these movies. It spawned...
So so that's what you're saying, is that the reason why some of these cult movies out of the blue get sequels when some don't is the rental, at least for the 80s, is the back money they make on the back end.
Yes.
Well, sometimes you could even say it might be the international market.
Definitely.
If there's enough international money...
And that was, I think, also the case with Highlander. But I honestly, when you take a movie like Dredd, I'm not giving up hope on a sequel. I mean, once they see it all come in, let's put it this way. If they can figure out a way to deliver something for less to maximize the profit.
For at least not more.
Oh, no, not more.
Same or less.
Same or less, but preferably less. To convince the studio to make it sort of a... Here's another good example. And I think that, again, a lot of people would be like, what? But again, it's just a narrow audience. You have coming out in September the third Riddick movie.
Yes.
Now, I am a huge fan of Pitch Black. Riddick, I actually just watched Chronicles of Riddick. It's a very bloated movie, but it's not terrible. I don't think it's terrible. It needs to be cut by like half an hour. It needs a lot of work, but I like it. I just like it. I don't love it. Now, what happened? Well, Universal said, all right, this movie was a disaster. We're not going to do any more. Vin Diesel and David Twohy bought the rights. Now, they had always envisioned a trilogy, but they scaled back their vision of what the third film would be to make it fit the mold of the original Pitch Black.
Okay.
Much, much more streamlined and much, much more kind of like...
Creature film.
Yeah. And also
more
action,
suspense,
less like midi-chlorian force nonsense.
Less Ben-Hur.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And they're putting it out in September, and Universal's like, yeah, we'll distribute it. Now, Vin Diesel also, he had some success with the Fast and Furious sequels, so I'm sure
I saw that trailer that he
for Riddick,
the
teaser.
It feels like the original.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Now again, slash the budget, slash all that stuff, and. I mean, who cared about a Riddick movie? Chronicles came out in 2004. This is 9 years later. No one... I would even venture to say that whatever cult is built around Pitch Black is Vin Diesel and like 10 other guys.
No, it's Pitch Black. It's not Chronicles.
No, I know it's not
way.
Chronicles. But I'm saying is, Vin Diesel, I mean, on the strength of his love of the character... and again, because he got some negotiating power from the Fast and Furious sequels, and all of that has worked into the creation of this film and the potential, like, if they did it right, and they're putting it out in September when there's going to be no competition, you could reignite the franchise.
Yeah.
So who knows? And I would say that I love Pitch Black, but I don't see a lot of Pitch Black websites and Pitch Black forums and stuff like that. But yet you have, it's like this guerrilla marketing. He goes on Facebook and talks about it. And, people get excited about it. And, so there are so many models and so many game changers.
There's so many more avenues now than before. So things could come out of just about anywhere from whatever angle that you might never suspect, which gives the audience more power than ever before, but it also opens it up to possibilities that you haven't even imagined of people that you like. How come this guy has so much pull? Why would they listen to it opened it up so much. And like I said before, it was so narrow before. The number one driving factor is dollars, number one. And like we said before, international, dollars. Video market, dollars. The fans are crying, we don't care.
We don't care.
Unless you can demonstrate a certain amount of people that are going to show up and do something, like Star Trek people.
I'll give you just another example of how things have turned around with the vocal fan base. All right, a little more than 10 years ago, Firefly dies. Nobody gives a shit. The executives don't care. People are clamoring. Kiss my ass. But yet Joss Whedon, he makes it happen because people want to work with Joss Whedon, and Universal goes and says, okay, we want to work with this guy. We see potential in him. You want to do your Firefly, you'll do your Firefly. And then do something for us. But that never happened, and Marvel scooped him up anyway because Serenity bombed. But two examples, Fringe and Chuck. You have these two shows. Chuck kind of fringes on genre. It's a little genre-y.
Yeah.
Fringe is total genre. And those are two series that would have been canned after 13 episodes. Forget a full season. And yet they both got 5 seasons.
Well, with Fox, I have a feeling that they just don't want to have the reputation of being the ones that pulls the plug the first.
Yeah. and Chuck, they got Subway to practically, be the only sponsor for the show and do so much product placement. But who cared? They survived. So everything has changed.
And then you have shows like that are running for years, and you never realize they had so many seasons under their belt. Certain sitcoms, even WB shows, or even ABC Family Network shows, and it's like they're on their 18th season of, Jim Belushi's whatever show.
According to Jim.
And you're like, what?
Or that Rules of Engagement sitcom.
It's like, how are these shows still successful? And you look at some of these ratings, and the ratings aren't hot. So it's like, well, why haven't they pulled the plug on this?
They obviously fill some sort of void.
There's a mysterious thing, but
but that's not genre.
No, that's just internal political flukes. But listen, this was a good conversation on the topic of genre
and cult.
The genres, specifically to the cult hits and to the cult comebacks, which sometimes you need a map to figure out how the hell did this become what it is today, and why was it allowed to do this, and that. And a lot of times we don't know why anyone would bother, and a lot of times they're like, what took them so long? But I'd like to thank Steve for joining me today in this cult conversation.
My pleasure.
We will see you guys here next time on Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Y'all got on this boat for different reasons, but you all come to the same place. So now I'm asking more of you than I have before. As sure as I know anything, I know this. I aim to misbehave. I'm taking your sister under my protection here.
The only people she's a threat to is us on this boat.
It isn't safe. They're coming.
I think we better go.
Where are you hiding, little girl?
The Alliance wanted the reason they shouldn't have sent an assassin.
Every minute you keep River Tam from me, more people will die. This was your fault.
I don't murder children.
I do.
The Alliance has gone to enormous trouble to find you, friend. You'll know what it is you're carrying. You know that girl?
She is a mite unpredictable. Mood swings of a sort.
It's worse than you know.
It usually is.
It's a fair bet the Alliance knows what's coming.
No. They're not gonna see this coming.
Let's be bad guys.
We're not alone.
No more running.
This is gonna get pretty interesting.
Define interesting.
Oh God, we're all gonna die?
I want to resolve this like civilized men. I'm not threatening you. I'm unarmed.
Good.
Stop.